Okay, today we're going to talk about graphing. There's lots of different ways we can graph. We're actually going to talk about the box and whiskers plot. Then we're going to talk about histograms and pie charts, some dot plots, scatter plots and line graphs, and finally we're talking about a stem and leaf plot. And all this comes back to what we did in the first video on statistics, which was analyzing data. So if you have not watched the analyzing data video, please go back, because we're going to go back to this slide that we did with analyzing data, and we're going to talk about all of these different things and how they go together. Specifically, what we need for the box and whiskers plot is we need what's called the 5-number summary. So I'm going to write it one more time over here. The 5-number summary. And we did it before over here. We came up with this 5-number summary. So like I said, if you haven't watched the other video, go watch the other video on how to come up with the 5-number summary, because we're going to just use it in this video. Okay, so our 5 numbers were the minimum was 2, the maximum is going to be 6, the median was 4, Q1 was 3, and Q3 was 5. Okay, so this is how a box and whiskers plot goes. First off, you need a number line. So there's some generic number line. Hopefully you make it better than that one, because that was not my best number line. So I'm going to try that one again. Should look like a number line at least. Yeah, that one's better. And we're going to put some tick marks on it. Now, we need to have these numbers on it. So in this particular case, I'm going to just count by ones. But you can count by anything you want, but make sure you keep in mind that you need to accurately put the numbers that you get from the 5-number summary on your number line. So make sure that it starts low enough that the first number's on there, high enough that the last number's on there, and that the middle numbers are easy to get to. Okay? In this case, I'm going to start at 0 and I'm going to count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so there's my numbers, and this is how a 5-number summary works. First off, you go take your minimum, which in this case is 2, and you go above 2 and you put a dot. That's the first step. You do the same thing for the maximum. So you go find 6 and you put a dot. Then you do it for the median, and Q3, and Q1, and then finally Q3. So you should have 5 dots because, again, it is a 5-number summary. So you should have 5 very accurate dots on a number line that is graphed. Okay? Now that you have your 5 dots, the middle 3 dots, okay, 1, 2, 3, the middle 3 dots are going to form your box. Okay? So the box is going to be the middle 3 dots. Okay? And you just make a box out of them. Like so. Okay? So that the middle dot is in the middle of your box, and the left dot and the right dot go through the edges of your box. Okay? And then your median, which is this middle dot, is going to get a line straight up and down. So now it ends up being 2 boxes, one through each of the 3 dots. Okay? And then the whiskers go to your min and the max, which are the outer dots. Okay? So you start from that middle dot right there, and you go to the outer one and you put a little line through it, and you do the same thing on the other side. And that is called a box and whiskers plot. Now, there's lots of things it does tell you, and we're going to go through all of them. But we've talked in another video about symmetric versus asymmetric. Okay? This thing is symmetric. If you take a look at it, left and right, boxes are about the same width. The whiskers are about the same length. This one is called symmetric. So this would be a good candidate for standard deviation. If you end up with a box and whiskers plot that looks something like this, we would call this asymmetric. Okay? Because it's not centered. Okay? So when we're talking about symmetric versus asymmetric, this is what we're talking about. And in this case, we would use the standard deviation. This case, we'll probably use IQR. And I actually think I misspoke in the other video. This one will be for the median, and this one actually talks about the mean. So when you talk about standard deviation, it's how close it is to the mean. So we got box and whiskers plot. Now, on the SAT, they're probably not going to ask you to make one. They're probably going to ask you to interpret it. So let's talk about what it does and does not tell you. First thing, we were talking about mean, median, and mode. This thing cannot tell you the mean, because in order to find the mean, you need all the numbers so you can add them up. You don't know all the numbers here. You know the the minimum, you know the maximum, you know the median, and that's about it. And the median may or may not even be one of your numbers. So the only two numbers you really know are the minimum and maximum, which is not nearly enough for the mean. So you cannot find the mean with this thing. Median, you can clearly find the median. It's right there. Okay, that is what that line is. So median, you can absolutely find. Mode, again, you need to have some numbers. The only thing you know is the min and the max. So you cannot find the mode. You can find the min right there. And you can find the max, which is right there. And you can find Q1 and Q3, because this is how we made it. So if we're asking you for range, you can find the range, because the range is simply max minus min. In this case, it would be 6 minus 2. You can find the IQR, because IQR is Q3 minus Q1, which you're given Q3 and Q1. So you can find the range, you can find the IQR. So what you can't find is the mean and the mode. Okay? So make sure you can understand and how to read this box, because it may give you just this box and whiskers plot and ask you a question like, oh, what's the range of this thing? What does its standard deviation look like? Which is talking about being symmetric or asymmetric. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. Next one is a histogram, and we'll also talk about pie chart. So a histogram looks like this. And we're going to collect things in what we call bins. In this case, I'm going to have bins that are 2 wide. So we're going to say that 0 is less than or equal to x is less than 2. So in this case, with the or equals 2, our bin is going to start at 0, and we'll put 0 in our first bin. But 2 is not in our first bin, so 2 would be in the second bin. So our first bin is going to go from 0 to 2. And if 0 is one of our data points, we're going to count it in this bin. The next one is going from 2 to 4, but the 2, since we didn't count it in the first bin, will be counted in the second bin. So in between 2 and 4, we're going to count 2, but again, we're not going to count 4, because 4 is going to be counted in the third bin, and so on. So 6 is not in this bin, it would be in the next bin over here, and we can keep going on and on and on. On the left side, we're going to simply count how many numbers we have. So again, our numbers were 3, 6, 4, 5, 3, 2, and 4. Okay, so we want to know how many numbers are between 0 and 2, counting 0, not counting 2. So I look through the numbers. 3 is not, 6 is not, 4 is not, 5 is not, 3 is not, 2. I'm tempted to count 2, but remember, we don't count it in this first bin, so there are no numbers in this first bin. So we're going to just leave it blank. Now let's go from 2 to 4. So we got 1, we don't count 4. 2. In this case, we will count 2 because it's the second bin. So there are 3 numbers. So we're going to go up to 3. So our second bin has 3 numbers in it. From 2 to 4, there are 3 numbers. And then from 4 to 6, this case, we will count the 4. We're going to count the 5. We'll count the other 4, but we're not counting the 6 because that goes in the next bin. So again, there are 3. And we'll add the next bin over there. And the last bin, from 6 to 8, there's 1, just the number 6, so it's only 1 high. So this is called a histogram. Okay, so the question is, you know, what can you tell for it? So before we looked at the same things, mean, median, mode, minimum, max, range, and IQR. Okay, well here you can't find the mean because again you don't have the numbers. You can't even find the median. The best you might be able to hope for is to know that the median is between 4 and 6, so you might be able to narrow it some, but you cannot possibly find the exact median. But I know that if there are 3 over here and 1 over here, that means the median is going to definitely be in this box. Mode, you can't tell the mode because again you don't know the numbers. These could be all separate numbers or they could all be one number, so you can't find the mode. Minimum, best you can tell me is the minimum is somewhere between 2 and 4, and the maximum is somewhere between 6 and 8, but you cannot find the exact numbers here. You can't even find the range because you don't know the min and the max, and you can't find the IQR because you can't even find the median. So you actually can't find any of these things. Well, at least the exact numbers for them. So what is it good for? Well, it's good for looking at overall data. And here I'm looking at overall data, and I'm saying, you know what? There's a lot of people between 2 and 6. So when we typically see this, it would be something like letters, and let's say that this is an A+, This is a, this is a B, and this is a C. And I can say, well, most people are A's and B's, no, a few A pluses, and nothing below C. So grades are a great time that we see histograms used all the time because it gives us the overall picture, even though it doesn't give us any of the specifics. Now, a pie chart. Pie chart generally are circles. I suppose you could try to make it out of something else, but almost all are circles. And we're going to represent this data that we just see right here on the pie chart. And we're going to do the same exact thing that we just had. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to figure out how to make it. Now, for now, you can eyeball it. I'm going to tell you how to actually do it, but I think more importantly than knowing how to make it for the SAT, it's going to be reading and interpreting a pie chart. So make sure that you can, if you only do part of it, make sure you can read and interpret. Clearly, these two slices of our pie chart are going to be the same. And then I got one left over. So the first thing I need to do to make a pie chart is figure out what the total is. And our total is out of 7. Okay? This first one is going to be 0 out of 7, from 0 to 2. The second one will be 3 out of 7, thus the 3. And then we get another 3 out of 7. And the last one is going to be 1 out of 7. Okay, so I would have to break this up into sevenths. Now, if you're good and you know how to break it up into sevenths, go for it. If you're not, here's how you do it. You can use ratios. So you're going to say 1 is to 7 as x is to 360, because that's how many degrees there are in a circle. And you'll visit this more in geometry. But then you could do some cross multiplication, and you're going to find out that x ends up being 360 divided by 7, which is, I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head, 35, so it's 51 and a little bit, point something. Okay, so it's 51 and a little bit. So if you needed to actually measure this, you could use this technique to do it. But I'm going to just eyeball it here. So I know I need to divide this up into sevenths. So if I did fourths and did it again, I'd end up with eighths. So it's not going to be quite fourths. So it's going to be something like this. And then these are going to have to go like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's sevenths. Now, one of these sevenths is going to be 6 to 8. So we're going to use this to represent 6 to 8. And you always have a key. And this is going to represent 6 to 8. Okay? And actually, let me erase a little bit over here just to get us some more space, because I don't like the way I wrote that. We're going to say it's like this. From 6 to 8 is 1/7. And then let's do 4 to 6. Now it's going to be 3 sevenths. And for 4 to 6, let's shade it all the way in so it's nice and solid. And you could always use a different color too. So 4 to 6, these lines shouldn't be here. So first off, let's get rid of them. So there's our pie slice from 4 to 6. And this has to be all the way filled in. So this is going to take a little bit of time. Probably should have used the other one to be all the way filled in, but I'll illustrate the point. And I think you got the picture. Okay, and then the last one's also 3, 6. So again, we got to get rid of these. And in this case, so this is 2 to 4. I'm going to use dots. So this is going to just be dots. Okay, and like I said, you can always use different colors if it would be necessary. And the last one is going to be from 0 to 2, and we'll just leave it blank because there isn't one. So it will tell you that from 0 to 2 there is nothing there whatsoever. So that's how you make a pie chart. So a pie chart and a histogram are actually very similar. They tell you the same information. It's just a representation. This is made out of bars and gives you the totals. And this is made out of a circle, and it ends up being pie slices. All right, and then the last one I want to show you right now, and then I'll do the rest of them in a second video, is the dot plot. So here's a dot plot. First off, a dot plot needs a number line. So there's a number line. And just like before, I'm going to get our data up here again. So 3, 6, 4, 5, 3, and 2, and 4. You need a number line, and it needs to include the numbers that you have. So you can use any scale you want, but make sure that you can graph these points on the number line. And here's how our dot plot works. And we use dot, but it can be any mark you really want. I think your textbook uses X's, but it doesn't really matter what the mark is. You can use emojis, you can use stars, smiley faces, whatever you want. I'm going to use dots. So above the 3, I'm going to put a dot. And then I go to the next one, which is a 6. Above the 6, I put a dot. Go on the next one, which is a 4. Above the 4, I put a dot. We do it with the 5. And then 3. Oh, I already have a dot there, so we're going to put a second dot above the 3. And we'll go above the 2. And then lastly, above the 4. Oh, I had a dot, so I'll go above it and put a second dot. Okay, so there are 7 data points, so you should have 7 dots, and I have 7 dots here. This is called a dot plot. So just like we did before, let's talk about mean, median, mode, min, max, range, and IQR. Okay, so mean. Can we calculate mean from this? Absolutely. We know every single data point, so you can calculate mean. Median. You got every data point. You can calculate median. Mode. Yes, you can calculate mode. As a matter of fact, it's easy. It's 3 and 4. It's going to be the highest bars that form here from your dots. Minimum. First dot you see. Maximum, last dot you see. Range, well, that's maximum minus minimum. That's easy to do. And IQR, well, we'd have to figure out and put them in order, but since you have every dot, you can figure out IQR. So you can actually find everything from a dot plot, which is why they're so handy. So make sure you understand how to use a dot plot, because I could give you a dot plot, and you can calculate every single one of these from this dot plot by me just giving this to you with no numbers. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you ask, and then in the next video, we'll continue on graphing.